Hello, welcome to On Point. I'm Mike Tersigni. Today we're going to talk about the future of radio, commercial and public AM and FM radio. It is in its 100-year history, radio has been declared dying or dead many times, but it's always survived. Today it faces a host of new challenges. Joining me are Darren Rose, the program's coordinator and on-air personality at 98.7 FM. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
And Professor William Toutant, a Cal State Northridge music professor and former dean of the College for Radio, and hosts his very own opera show on the public radio station 88.5 KCSN. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Now, Darren, I'd like to start off with you. What laws are currently in place in regards to commercial radio stations paying royalty fees for the songs that are played over the air?
Well, it's illegal to pay to play. It's called payola, and plugola is also a part of that whole realm of, kind of decency in radio. Back in the 50s, I think there was a lot of, under-the-table money that was exchanged for radio play, and it was about 4 or 5 years ago, there was a big incident regarding some, program directors, from people that were taking, items, whether it was a TV or a vacation, and so it kind of was raised again. The whole issue of payola was raised again. And now it's really strict. The company I work for, Clear Channel, we have a test we take, kind of a training we go through where, you're trained on things that you can't do, things that you need to disclose. For example, if I owned a business, if I owned a restaurant and I was discussing that restaurant on the air, I would have to say, this is my restaurant XYZ. And otherwise, if not, it would be considered plugola because I'm benefiting from that. Payola is more when it comes to the music itself. It just can't happen. You can't. It's a major fine. You lose your job. You probably never work in the industry again.
Okay, so Professor, do these go the same with public radio?
It's basically the same thing, but since we're not commercial, it's probably quite not as strict because we don't have advertisers, but we do have underwriters. And we have to be very careful to avoid what is known as a call to action. For example, if I say on my show that my show is underwritten by Los Angeles Opera, which it is, I can say that they're producing La Traviata in 2 weeks, but I can't say, and it's a great production, you really should see it. All I can say is that there it is, here's how you get tickets.
Okay, so I guess to help out our viewers, what is the difference between commercial and public radio?
Commercial is that we are operating, our revenue comes from the money that comes in from advertisers. So it's kind of a trickle-down effect. I mean, if you have good content, so you have listeners. The more listeners you have, the more advertising you're going to have, the higher your rates can be, and therefore more revenue you have. So it's all about the whole aspect of commercial. I used to work in a college radio station as well, and a lot of it was, you could probably speak better to this, but it's listener supported, donations, right, fundraisers, that type of thing, whereas our donations come from advertisers in the form of, web advertising, sponsoring events, obviously spot advertising, running commercials in the air.
It's not that different in that we don't call it advertising, we call it underwriting. We can't say this is the best opera production ever, but we can say that, for example, LA Opera does underwrite my show. And in return for that, they get a spot on the station's website. I don't want to say promote, but I announce every single production that they give and who's going to be on. And also as part of the agreement, the Sunday before the production opens, I broadcast a recording of it and do an interview. But once again, I can't say go to see it. Also, we need as large a listening base as possible because that's how we also raise money through subscriptions. We ask our subscribers to donate money, become members of KCSN. And so the larger listener base we have, usually it's 1 in 10 listeners will become a member. So if we have 10,000 listeners, we've got 1,000 members. If we have 100,000 listeners, we probably have 10,000 members. So just as in as in commercial radio, the more listeners you have, the more financially viable you are.
Okay. So there's new legislation going on, and there's artists such as will.i.am from the Black Eyed Peas and Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins that are currently speaking to Congress, basically asking them to pass legislation for artists to get paid royalty fees every time their song is played on the radio. How would this affect a station like 98.7?
Well, 98.7 or any commercial radio station, and again, I don't know if that would apply to public stations or what the details of that legislation are, but it's one more expense. Just with the current status of the economy, radio stations, businesses across the country are struggling. It's layoffs and everything. So one more expense that we would have to incur would be a big hit. And we've talked a little bit about at the station. We've done some kind of some lobbying of our own to hopefully let this go. And I think that and to play devil's advocate from the record side, I mean, it's been probably 9-10 years when the whole downloading thing started to happen, and artists were getting upset about, and rightfully so, about not getting paid for their downloading and stealing of their music. So I think it's all a residual effect of that. I think and artists do deserve to get paid, but again, from our standpoint, it would be another cost that would be difficult to incur.
Okay, because I know also on the topic that artists, I know nowadays they don't really make as much money off of album sales either. It's strictly all about touring and getting their name out there.
Yeah, surprisingly, selling merch at concerts is one of the biggest revenue sources that artists have, other than the cost of going to the show, but buying the t-shirts and the hats and all the merchandise.
Okay. Now, one thing that I've always heard about Clear Channel is that you could drive across the country, listen to Clear Channel stations, and hear the exact same playlist. What do you have to say about that?
Well, obviously your format's going to change. You're talking if you're listening to an alternative station all the way.
Well, say you start in LA and you're listening to KISS FM, and then you drive across the country and you continue to listen to top 40 Clear Channel owned stations. Would you hear the exact same playlist?
No. Not at all, and I work in the alternative format, so I can speak to that. But we keep a close eye on about 4 or 5 different markets. What they're playing, especially new music that comes out. But there are definitely artists that are strictly Southern California artists, no doubt. Social Distortion, 311, that kind of have almost more of a beachy vibe to it. Sublime. Midwest, a little bit of a different sound. East Coast, a little bit of a different sound. So there's your core artists, like when it comes to all the alternative format, like your Pearl Jams, your Nirvanas, Foo Fighters, Linkin Park, that are always going to be successful and always going to dominate a radio station. But I think per market and per region in the United States, you're going to come across pretty vastly different playlist. And again, I can't speak to classic rock. Is a little bit different because you're looking at more of an older format that stays stagnant.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, Professor, how does KCSN, which is located and broadcasts from Cal State Northridge, how does it maintain its success when there is such a disconnect between the station and the students on the campus?
Well, first, that's a loaded question, okay? In terms of, first we have to deal with the mission of the station. Is the mission of the station to serve the students, or is it to serve the community? And it's to serve the community. And if you look at the other major university-sponsored stations in Los Angeles, KPCC doesn't serve the students of Pasadena City College. KUSC doesn't serve the students of USC. KCRW doesn't serve the students of Santa Monica City College. Our mission at KCSN is to serve the community, but as you well know, all of the news broadcast on KCSN is broadcast by students in the journalism department. It's a way to get them professional experience, an on-air live experience, which you don't hear on KUSC, KCRW, or KPCC at all. So I would argue that we're not disconnected from the students. In fact, in my own show, many times my producer has a student intern with him during the production of the show. So there are many more opportunities for students at CSUN, at KCSN, than you'll find at all the other 3 stations combined.
Okay.